race. This highway rest stop map hides a warning. On a humid Tuesday in 2019, a faded paper map taped inside a New Mexico rest stop bathroom stall caught the eye of a trucker named Raylan Cho. He was 42, drove a white Kenworth with a dented fender, and usually just wanted coffee and a quiet 5 minutes. That morning, he'd stopped at the I-40 Welcome Center near Gallup to stretch his legs and check his logbook. The map showed the whole state with cartoon cacti and smiling suns, the kind of thing state tourism boards print by the thousands. But someone had scribbled in black marker across the empty stretch between Grants and Thoreau. It read, "Do not stop here after dark." Raylan frowned, snapped a photo with his phone, and thought nothing more of it until 2 nights later. Raylan's usual route took him west toward Flagstaff, and he passed that same stretch just after sunset. His rig's headlights cut through the dust, and he saw a pickup pulled off on the shoulder with its hazards blinking. Out of habit, he slowed, ready to offer help. But something felt wrong. The truck looked abandoned, doors wide open, no one around. He kept driving, uneasy, and called it in to dispatch once he hit cell range. The next morning, local news reported a stolen vehicle found near that spot, but no suspect or explanation. Raylan remembered the map. He pulled up his photo and sent it to a friend who worked highway patrol. Her name was Tessa Ruiz, 39, and she'd been with the New Mexico State Police for 12 years. She didn't laugh when Raylan showed her the image. In fact, she'd seen something similar before. Back in 2016, a hiker had reported finding a note tucked in a gas station brochure rack near the same mile marker. It warned about men in dark trucks watching the road after 10 p.m. At the time, it was filed as a prank. But Tessa dug up the old report and cross-referenced it with missing persons logs. 3 travelers had vanished near that corridor over 5 years, all last seen after dark, all driving alone. None were ever found. She requested archived traffic cam footage from the Department of Transportation, though most cameras in that zone had been offline for maintenance since 2018. Tessa visited the rest stop herself, posing as a tourist. The map was still there, slightly more faded. She checked the stall for fingerprints, but found only smudges and old gum. She interviewed the janitor, an older man named Hector, who'd worked there since 2010. He said kids sometimes drew on the maps, but this warning had been there a good while. He recalled a woman in a red sedan asking about it last spring, looking nervous. Tessa tracked down the rest stop's visitor logbook, which listed vehicle makes and entry times for safety checks. Sure enough, a red Toyota Camry signed in on April 3, 2019. The name was smudged, but the plate number matched a rental from Albuquerque. Tessa called the rental company. They confirmed the car was returned early, with extra mileage and a cracked windshield. The renter, a woman named Lila Madsen, had filed a police report in Santa Fe, claiming she'd been followed for miles by a black SUV with no plates. She refused to say more. Tessa tracked Lila down through a mutual contact at a roadside diner in Bernalillo. Lila was 28, worked as a field nurse, and had been driving home from a shift in Shiprock. She told Tessa she'd pulled over near mile marker 212 to check a flat tire. That's when she saw 2 men in a lifted truck watching her from a dirt road off the highway. She jumped back in her car and drove 50 miles without stopping. Later, at the rest stop, she saw the warning on the map and added her own note beneath it. "I just wanted to save someone else," she said. Tessa asked why she didn't report it properly. Lila shook her head. "Cops told me there was nothing they could do without proof, so I left my own." Tessa went back to the map with a UV light. Under the top layer of marker, she found faint pencil lines forming coordinates. They matched a BLM land parcel just south of the highway, dry and rarely patrolled. She got a warrant and brought a search team. They found tire tracks, empty water bottles, and a torn piece of fabric snagged on a barbed wire fence. Lab tests linked the fabric to a jacket worn by a suspect in a separate auto theft ring operating out of Arizona. The group had been using remote stretches of I-40 to ambush lone drivers, stealing vehicles, and sometimes worse. The map warning wasn't a ghost story. It was a quiet alarm system, passed hand to hand by people who'd survived. Over the next few weeks, Tessa worked with federal agents to track the ring's movements. They discovered the group used burner phones and switched vehicles at abandoned ranches. One of their members had once worked road maintenance and knew where cameras were down. Another had a cousin who ran a salvage yard near Holbrook, Arizona, where stolen cars were stripped fast. Tessa interviewed truckers, hitchhikers, and gas station clerks along the route. A diner cook in Thoreau remembered serving two rough-looking men who paid in cash and asked about easy targets on the westbound lanes. A retired schoolteacher in Grants said she'd seen the same black SUV idling near the rest stop 3 times in 2 months. Raylan kept driving his route but started carrying a dash cam and checking his mirrors more often. He told Tessa about another trucker who swore he saw someone tampering with road signs near the same stretch. That detail led them to check GPS logs from state maintenance crews. Sure enough, a work order had been faked in 2018 to remove a warning sign about high winds. Without it, drivers slowed less, making them easier to follow. The theft ring had been planning this for years, using gaps in infrastructure like predators use shadows. In late 2019, police staged a sting near the BLM parcel. They used an unmarked van with a fake flat tire as bait. Just after midnight, a dark truck rolled up from the dirt access road. 2 men got out wearing gloves and scanning the highway. They were arrested before they reached the van. In their truck, agents found zip ties, a handheld radio tuned to police frequencies, and a notebook with mile markers and vehicle descriptions. One page had a rough sketch of the rest stop bathroom, with an arrow pointing to the map. The case never made national news. Charges were filed quietly. The rest stop map was replaced in 2020, but not before Tessa took one last photo. She keeps it in her desk drawer, a reminder that sometimes the smallest clue holds the loudest warning. Out there on the open road, help doesn't always come from a badge or a siren. Sometimes it's just a scribble on a tourist map left by someone who made it through the night. And sometimes that scribble is the only thing standing between you and the dark. The stories. The paramedic's glove was found miles off route. In late 2018, a single blue nitrile glove turned up in a dry creek bed near Route 62, over 40 miles from the nearest hospital. It was the kind used by emergency crews, still folded neatly, as if just taken off. The discovery seemed minor until someone checked the county EMS logs and found a missing unit. That glove belonged to a paramedic named Jace Varela, 33, who'd vanished during a routine transfer run between 2 rural clinics in eastern New Mexico. Jace worked for Horizon Medical Transport, a small private ambulance service that covered 3 counties. He was known for double-checking equipment and never rushing a patient. On the morning of October 17, 2018, he'd been assigned to move a stable elderly man from the Las Cruces Outpatient Center to a rehab facility in Roswell. His partner that day was a trainee named Marisol Quinn, 29, who'd only been on the job for 6 weeks. According to dispatch logs, their ambulance left Las Cruces at 8:42 a.m. and checked in at 9:15 near Artesia. After that, radio contact stopped. Marisol was found 2 days later, dehydrated but alive, sitting beside the disabled ambulance on a dirt road off Highway 285. She told investigators the vehicle had overheated just after noon. While Jace tried to fix it, 2 men in a dark pickup pulled up, offering help. She said they seemed friendly at first, but then one pulled a weapon. She remembered being shoved into the truck bed, then waking up alone in the desert with a cracked rib and no memory of how she got there. She walked for hours before flagging down a rancher. Her story was shaky, but her injuries matched her account. The ambulance was towed back for inspection, nothing was stolen, but the glove box was empty and the GPS unit had been yanked out. Investigators found Jace's phone in the cab, battery dead, last signal pinging near the crash site. But the glove found weeks later in the creek bed didn't make sense. That location was nowhere near their route or where MrBallen was found. State police reviewed archived traffic footage from gas stations and toll plazas along possible detours. One grainy clip from a convenience store near Hondo showed a man matching Jace's build walking alone at 10:30 p.m. that same night, wearing a jacket but no gloves. He bought water and a protein bar, paid cash, and left without speaking. Detectives tracked down the store clerk, a college student named Trey who worked nights. He recalled the man seemed tired but calm and kept glancing at the road. When shown a photo of Jace, Trey said it looked like him, but harder around the eyes. That detail stuck with lead investigator Lena Cho, 41, a veteran of the state's missing persons unit. She pulled Jace's personnel file and found he'd reported a suspicious vehicle following his ambulance twice in the prior month. Both times, he described a black Ford F-150 with mismatched hubcaps. No plates were visible, the reports were logged but never followed up due to lack of evidence. Lena dug deeper into Horizon Medical Transport's records. She learned the company had recently lost a contract to a larger competitor, forcing layoffs and route consolidations. Jace had been vocal about safety concerns, especially after a fellow paramedic was assaulted during a call in 2017. Lena interviewed that paramedic, now retired, who confirmed Jace had talked about installing a hidden dash cam. Horizon denied authorizing any such device, but when Lena got a warrant to search the recovered ambulance again, she found a micro SD card taped under the passenger seat. The footage was fragmented but chilling. It showed the two men approaching the stalled ambulance. One wore a mechanic's shirt with an oil stain, the other had a tattoo of a snake on his neck. They spoke briefly with Jace, who stayed near the rear doors. Then MrBallen stepped forward, and everything went dark for 12 seconds. When the video resumed, Jace was alone, walking away from the ambulance toward the pickup. His hands were not bound. He looked back once, then got in the passenger seat willingly. Lena replayed that moment 10 times. It didn't look like a kidnapping, it looked like a pickup. She cross-referenced the tattoo description with local arrest records. A man named Darnell Rios, 36, had been booked in 2016 for auto theft. His file included a photo showing the same snake tattoo. He'd served 18 months and was released in early 2018. Neighbors said he'd been working odd jobs and driving a black F-150. Police brought him in for questioning. He denied knowing Jace, but admitted he'd done tow runs for a salvage operator in Clovis. When pressed about October 17th, he claimed he was in Texas visiting family. No one could confirm it. Then, Lena got a call from a wildlife officer who'd been surveying the creek bed where the glove was found. He'd spotted tire tracks leading to an old pump house used by a defunct irrigation co-op. Inside, they found empty water bottles, a folded EMS uniform shirt, and a notebook with Jace's handwriting. The entry stopped on October 16th. The last line read, "If this goes sideways, tell Lena Cho to check the fuel logs." Confused, Lena pulled Horizon's vehicle maintenance records. She discovered the ambulance assigned to Jace had been refueled 3 times in 1 week at a remote station near Portales, far outside its normal zone. The attendant remembered a man in scrubs paying cash, always at night. Putting it together, Lena theorized Jace had uncovered a side operation. Horizon's dispatcher, a man named Ellis Griggs, had been redirecting ambulances to pick up packages disguised as medical supplies. These were then driven across state lines and swapped for cash. Jace must have figured it out and tried to gather proof. The kidnapping was likely a staged handoff that went wrong when MrBallen showed up unexpectedly. Jace went with the men to protect her, or maybe to finish what he started. Griggs was arrested in January 2019 after agents found encrypted texts on his phone arranging medical transfers with known traffickers. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy and racketeering. Darnell Rios was charged as an accessory, but cut a deal by revealing where Jace was last seen alive, near the Texas border, heading east on foot. No body was ever found. The case was closed as presumed deceased in 2020. Marisol left EMS and moved to Colorado. She still has nightmares about the truck bed. Lena kept Jace's glove in a sealed evidence bag on her desk for years. She never wore it, but she'd look at it when a case felt hopeless. It reminded her that sometimes the truth isn't in the big files or loud confessions. Sometimes it's in a single glove, left miles off route, waiting for someone to ask why it's there.
Night guard who vanished without trace. On the morning of February 3, 2019, the day shift supervisor at the shuttered Blackwater Foundry in eastern Pennsylvania arrived to find the front gate unlocked, the security logbook open to a blank page, and the night guard's thermos still warm on the desk, but no sign of Silas Mercer, the 52-year-old veteran who'd worked the midnight to dawn shift for nearly 3 years without missing a single night. His patrol flashlight lay on the floor near the east stairwell. His coat hung neatly on the back of his chair, and his radio, tuned to channel 7, was still crackling with static, as if someone had just stopped talking. Silas wasn't the kind of man who disappeared. A former steelworker laid off after the mill closures of the early 2000s, he'd taken the guard job for its quiet routine and steady paycheck. He lived alone in a rented room above Henderson's Hardware in the town of Mill Creek, walked to work every night at 11:45 p.m. through the same snow-dusted alley, and always called his younger sister, Marlene, every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. sharp to check in. He carried a small spiral-bound notebook where he logged every round with military precision, west wing clear, 12 to 30 a.m. Boiler room door secure, 2:15 a.m., and never deviated from his route. That night, he'd texted Marlene at 11:58 p.m., all quiet, snow's picking up, back to work. It was the last anyone heard from him. When he didn't answer his radio at 6 a.m., his usual sign-off time, the day crew assumed he'd stepped out for coffee or gone to warm up in his truck. But by 7:30, with his blue Ford Ranger still parked in the employee lot, keys in the ignition, and his lunchbox containing a peanut butter sandwich and an apple untouched on the passenger seat, they called the county sheriff. Inside the foundry's security office, everything was in place except Silas. His keys, wallet, and laminated work ID were in the pocket of his navy blue parka. His boots muddy from the overnight snow sat by the door, laces untied, as if he'd just kicked them off. And on the desk, next to a half-finished crossword puzzle from the Times Mill Creek Ledger asterisk, was a single Polaroid photograph. Face down. The photo showed the foundry's old boiler room, a section sealed off since a fire in 1992, with a red arrow drawn in marker pointing to a rusted floor grate near the back wall. On the back, in handwriting that matched Silas's logbook exactly. They never capped it, still breathing. The complication deepened when investigators reviewed the building's lone functioning camera, a grainy black and white feed covering the main entrance, powered by a backup generator. It showed Silas clocking in at 11:59 p.m., walking through the lobby with his thermos in one hand and his flashlight in the other, and disappearing down the east corridor. But at 3:17 a.m., the footage cut to static for exactly 43 seconds. When it returned, the lobby was empty. No one entered, no one left. Yet the timestamp on Silas's final radio transmission, picked up by the county dispatch archive and later verified by the state police communications unit, was 3:18 a burst of white noise followed by his voice, strained but calm, saying, "Down in the old shaft, it's open." I didn't before cutting off abruptly. The foundry had no official shaft. It was a surface-level industrial complex built in the 1930s, used for casting iron parts until it closed in 2006. But retired plant engineer Doris Velez, 74, who'd worked at Blackwater from 1968 to 1995, told investigators in a sworn witness statement that during World War II, the site had secretly housed a subcontractor for the Manhattan Project. They needed a place to test radiation shielding for transport containers, she explained. So they dug a vertical access tunnel beneath the boiler room about 30 feet deep to simulate underground storage. County historical records and declassified Army Corps documents later confirmed the tunnel's existence, listing it as permanently sealed with reinforced concrete in 1947. Then came the internal clue. Tucked inside Silas's notebook, on a page dated February, 2 nights before he vanished, was a hand-drawn map of the basement level with new annotations in red ink. Grate loose. Airflow detectable. Smells like ozone. Beneath it, a phone number with no name, just the words, "Call if I don't come back." The number traced to a prepaid track phone purchased with cash at a gas station in Scranton on January 28. The phone had made one call to a voicemail box that was never retrieved and went inactive on February 4. The twist wasn't about abduction or foul play. It was about truth and the weight of knowing too much. Audio forensic specialists from the state crime lab isolated the background noise in Silas's final transmission. Beneath the static and his voice, they detected the low, rhythmic hum of an electric ventilation fan model number matching units used in mid-century industrial air systems. But the foundry's entire HVAC system had been decommissioned in 2007. More telling, thermal imaging of the boiler room floor revealed a cold spot directly beneath the grate, consistent with airflow from below. In late March of 2019, a technical rescue team from the Pennsylvania State Fire Marshal's office descended into the shaft using harnesses and helmet cams. At the bottom, 32 feet down, they found an abandoned Cold War-era monitoring station, rusted consoles, mildewed logbooks dated 1948, and a wall calendar still pinned to April of that year. But they also found something newer, a compact HEPA air filtration unit still plugged into a hidden junction box wired to an off-grid solar array on the foundry's roof, and a set of fresh boot prints, size 10, diamond tread pattern leading to a side tunnel that exited half a mile away near an unmarked gravel access road bordering state forest land. Silas had discovered the shaft wasn't just open, it was being actively maintained, and he'd gone down to see why. No evidence suggested he'd been harmed, no signs of struggle in the shaft, no foreign DNA. His flashlight was found at the bottom, its lens cracked from a fall, its batteries drained. His analog wristwatch, recovered near the ladder's base, had stopped at 3:22 a.m., likely from impact, but his radio was never found. The most plausible theory, supported by archived utility records, satellite imagery, and interviews with 3 former Blackwater maintenance workers, is that a private defense logistics contractor hired by a federal agency to store low-level classified materials in geologically stable, off-grid locations had quietly reactivated the tunnel in 2015. The foundry's remote location, thick concrete walls, and existing infrastructure made it ideal. They'd been using the shaft as a secure vault, entering through the hidden side tunnel to avoid detection. Silas, ever the meticulous observer, noticed the airflow, the faint hum at night, the loose grate. He investigated. And somewhere in that underground labyrinth, he either chose not to return, perhaps offered silence in exchange for answers, or encountered something that prevented his return. His truck was eventually sold at auction. His room above Henderson's Hardware was cleared out by Marlene, who kept only his notebook, the Polaroid, and his old Steelworkers Union pin. She never filed a formal missing persons update beyond the initial report. He wasn't reckless, she told a local historian in 2021. He was thorough. If he's gone, it's because he found something that needed staying. At this point, the facts that remained were simple. A night guard vanished, not because he was careless, but because he was too careful. He saw what others ignored, a whisper of air in a dead place, and followed it into the dark. The Blackwater foundry was demolished in 2021 due to structural instability, but the shaft entrance was capped with 3 feet of reinforced steel and sealed under a state environmental protection order. No official explanation was given to the public, just a weathered metal plaque bolted to a concrete slab that reads, "Danger no trespassing, authorized personnel only." And on still winter nights, when the snow muffles the world around the old industrial site and the wind howls through the pines, locals say you can still hear the faint buzz of a radio on Channel 7 and the echo of footsteps that never made it back to the surface. Silas Mercer's name isn't on any memorial, but in the quiet corners of Mill Creek, people remember. Some disappearances aren't mysteries. They're messages. And sometimes the only way to protect a truth is to become part of its silence. Missing Trail by Lakeside Shore, and quote. On a fog-draped morning in early September of 2018, a park ranger patrolling the eastern edge of Silver Pine Lake in northern Minnesota discovered a pair of hiking boots neatly placed beside a trail marker that didn't appear on any official map. The boots were dry, laced, and filled with folded trail notes, but the path they pointed toward vanished into thick birch woods after just 30 feet, swallowed by undergrowth and thyme. That phantom trail would become the only clue to the disappearance of Arden Kohler, a 41-year-old cartographer who'd come to the lake to verify discrepancies in state recreation maps and never walked back out. Arden wasn't a thrill seeker or a weekend hiker. She worked for North Central Geospatial, a small but respected firm contracted by the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources to update trail data for remote state parks. Her job combined old-school fieldwork with modern GPS, tech walking every marked path, logging conditions, and flagging inconsistencies between digital maps and reality. She'd spent 20 years doing this, from the Ozarks to the Adirondacks, and prided herself on accuracy. Maps lie if you don't ground truth them, she often said. Her assignment that week was routine. Cross-check GPS coordinates of trails around Silver Pine Lake, a glacial basin surrounded by boreal forest and rarely visited outside summer. She'd told her project manager she'd focus on the North Shore, where recent storms had reportedly washed out 2 connector paths. She planned to be in and out by lunch, just a half-day job. She carried her usual kit, a Garmin InReach satellite messenger, a waterproof Write-in-the-Rain notebook, a thermos of black coffee, and her father's old Minolta film camera, which she used to photograph trailheads for archival reference. But by 3 p.m., when she missed her scheduled check-in call, her team grew uneasy. By 5 p.m., they alerted the county sheriff. Her silver Ford Escape rental was found parked at the Whispering Pines trailhead, windows up, engine off, keys in the cup.